The power of traveling. The why, the what, and the how. Two of the most powerful and exciting ways to learn are through reading and travel. What we learn from travel can deeply shape our persona, careers, and life. Reading on the surface is passive, but internally active. Travel is both active on the outside and activates heart, body, mind, and soul within. Together they can power your imagination, work, and spirit, and are probably the best exercise for a full life. I have traveled as a child with family and alone, across the world, including India, walking, driving, cycling, sailing, or just dreaming in bed, classroom, or at work. Having just returned from a 3-month drive across Europe, from the Black Sea to the Atlantic Ocean, over 15,000 kilometers, I feel compelled to share some experiences from this and previous trips. I have chosen a few anecdotes from my professional and personal journeys, which have taught and continue to teach me the fundamentals of policy, politics, governance, education, and peacekeeping. Often talked about in the classroom, but rarely lived or practiced. These attributes are not fancy formulas or equations of the sciences, or grand propositions or hypotheses of the humanities. They are generosity, civic responsibility, integrity, empathy, and listening and professionalism. Usually these terms seem to be empty words. On the other hand, the abstractions, the logic, and facts of the formal disciplines appear to be the real stuff, which to a large extent are necessary for serious application, but not sufficient. Our greatest achievements are anchored in values. So let me share with you what I have learned at a railway station, on a train, on the street, across borders, or in war zones, from the millions of real-life gurus whom we walk past, little noticing the huge reservoir of wisdom at our feet. The what of travel. First, generosity of time and spirit, not necessarily money. My first big trip was backpacking across India after finishing my bachelor's. I had to take a very early morning train to Pilani from Delhi. I decided not to stay in a hotel to save some money and not have the anxiety of finding an auto rickshaw in the morning. As I arrived at Delhi railway station late in the night, it was packed like sardines in a cab. I couldn't find a spot to sit, and I looked around. As I hopped over people, a hand touched me, held me, and pulled me. I looked down, an 80-year-old man about said, "Kya chahiye?" I said, "Zara jagah." He touched a few people, made a place for me. He said, "Thaki lage ho?" I said, "Thaka to hu." He said, "So?" I said, "Kahan se hoga? Where will I sleep?" He nudged a few more people, created another crouching space. He took out his turban and made a pillow for me. And he said, "Ab so, aapki gaadi kitne baje hai?" 4 baje. "Theek hai, main aapko 3:30 baje uthaunga." I said, "Aap kaun ho?" He said, "Main Delhi ka rehne wala." "Where are you going?" "Hyderabad." "Why?" "My son, who was a driver there, was killed and I want to collect his remains." For a moment, I was astonished that this man at a ripe age, who had lost the jewel of his life, was still thinking of someone else. He had nothing, yet he gave of himself. He had created a place for me, a bed for me, and watched over me. This generosity has stayed with me all my life. To be able to give even when you have nothing is a remarkable gift. One does not have to be a billionaire to be a philanthropist. When you open up the garden itself, ideas flow. You create trust and connect with your surroundings, all necessary whether in the design of policy or the conduct of diplomacy. Second, civic responsibility. My next example is from our very own Mumbai. After spending many years overseas, I decided that I would use public transport as far as possible. And I decided to be car-bound. I would have missed a lot. I would have become an intelligent idiot, knowing a lot about policy techniques, but little of the ground conditions. As a result, I saw close up hundreds of bridges in a terrible state of disrepair, and long, unbearable and dangerous daily commutes of the millions of our people. Yet in the midst of the mayhem, I discovered beauty and hope. Wonderful examples of the human condition. One night I was returning home from the party office in Mandhyan by rail. As the train slowed down at Marine Lines, the compartment was almost empty, when an elderly, disheveled man on crutches, half blind, limped towards a switch to turn off the fans. I was taken aback and asked, what has this man received from our society or state? Yet he wants to give back. What a tremendous sense of ownership, civic sense. Many of us are taught civic education, ethics, and the art of living. We pray, do yoga, meditate, send out Facebook photos of our little service here or there, or back up bios advertising our contributions. And here, in a third-class bogie, I discovered a crippled, half-blind man silently, not doing the yoga, living the yoga. The conversations and encounters in the metros and local trains have been invaluable to my understanding the city, the psyche of its citizens, and of urban politics and planning. They are rich source not only for data, but also for poetry and story and inspiration for shaping and building our environment. Third, integrity. Integrity is integral to everything, to your own well-being, in the implementation of policy, or giving confidence to your own team or counterparts in negotiations. It is as much about being honest as it is about being accountable, taking responsibility for your actions. An 11-year-old boy gave me a deep lesson on integrity some years ago in the very heart of South Mumbai next to Kalagoda. It was a hot summer day in April. A thin boy with no slippers walked up to me on burning asphalt with a cloth in one hand and a polished tin in the other. He said, "May I polish your shoes?" "Only for ₹2. I have not eaten for 2 days." I said, "Look, I'm in a rush. I have to go. My shoes have been polished." "Here, I have ₹50 in my pocket." I gave it to him. "Go and eat." He said, "नहीं, जब तक कमाऊंगा नहीं, तो मैं आपसे पैसे नहीं दूंगा." I said, "Go. It's polished." He said, "Nahi." So I got my shoes polished. I said, "Now go and eat." He goes to the local barwala to get change and give me 48 rupees back. I said, "No, keep it all." He said, "Nahi, sirf ₹2 daam tha." Again I asked myself, amazing that the boy refuses to take money unless he has earned it. He insists on returning the change. Now ask yourself, how many MBAs do we know who graduate from the topmost institutions would say no to a windfall or bonus? How many doctors refuse a commission or a sponsorship from a pharmaceutical company? How many politicians would pass the Kalagoda litmus test? I have met hundreds of ordinary Indians on the road with extraordinary values. The street teaches us so much, even on a blistering afternoon. It is the university of life. Frankly, it is not difficult to be good. Fourth, empathy and listening. Our next anecdote is about empathy and listening in public diplomacy. Often we are told during our school years about the importance of oratia, elocution, and public speaking. We are never really trained to listen. It is crucial to listen before one speaks. Without listening and seeing, there can be no feeling or empathy. The place was Zagreb, Croatia, where the United Nations had arrived with a peacekeeping mandate in the former Yugoslavia. A few months into the operation, The UN headquarters was surrounded by thousands of Croatian women who had lost sons, husbands, and fathers during the war. They demanded the whereabouts of their men, missing and dead. The UN's mandate was unclear on the subject. Also, the UN leadership initially was reluctant to speak to a crowd of women who had around the headquarters for several days, stopping all movement. Eventually, Sergio Vieira de Mello, who was later killed during UN operations in Iraq, from the leadership decided to meet the women and clarify the issue. He met a small delegation of protesting women, listened to their concerns at length and made arrangements for what the UN could or could not do. After the group left, one woman stayed behind. She was blind and had lost 3 sons and a husband. She was weeping and continued to talk and talk. She wanted to know about her family immediately, which was not possible. Sergio listened intently, looking into her, holding her hand, nodding, asking questions, listening, never looked at his watch. There were crucial ceasefire meetings elsewhere where the fighting was going on, which he had to attend. He delegated that to others and listened and explained. This went on for 3 hours, after a meeting which had already taken 2 hours. When the rest of the women saw him give dignity to this lady, the press was there too. The next day the protest was called off, and regular relations resumed between the UN and the affected women and civil society in Croatia. It was a great triumph of patience, understanding and empathy in the midst of hostilities. 5th, professionalism. Simply put, professionalism is the constant search for excellence, going beyond the normal call of duty. While driving across Europe, one witnessed many such instances of excellence recently. In Hungary, I had left a very high-value credit card behind at a restaurant where I had made a reservation by phone and driven across to Slovakia. They recovered my phone number from the memory and called me and asked how they should return the card. In Croatia, while checking out from the hotel, I casually shared with the receptionist my lunch and travel plans as I was headed towards Austria. At a place on the way to Austria, I received a call from the hotel saying I had left my passport behind. She had remembered the name of the restaurant which I had only mentioned in passing to her in the morning. She got the passport delivered to me at the place where I was having lunch 70 kilometers away from Zagreb. In Switzerland, at a remote bed and breakfast, I arrived late in the night. A lady with 2 children, a beautiful lady in her 40s, with 2 children in her arms, walks to my car and she's the owner and asked, "May I carry your bags, sir?" I later learned that she had a doctorate in chemistry and had decided to enter the hospitality business because it gave her joy. And in France, after several weeks of moving around, my clothes were dirty. I was attending a seminar at a chateau in a national park. I asked the lady who was running the conference facility where was the laundry machine. She asked for the clothes. Early next morning when I came down for coffee, she was ironing and folding my clothes, far beyond the call of her duty. A true search for excellence. An owner, an educated woman, talking to a brown man and doing what her job required her to do, even though it was not her job. We are told these days that there is an anti-outsider wave in Europe. Nothing could be further from the truth. True, there are deep concerns about unregulated immigration, no doubt about it. But on the many, many miles of highways and back roads and across borders, I was waved across without a second look. I cannot recall a single instance of discomfort as I traveled through 20 countries. Travel is a great corrective to fake news. It is also a way of discovering excellence among normal people. On the ground, one feels the community of humanity, that we are all global citizens. Finally, the how of the power of travel. It is not about the length of travel or where you travel that matters. It could be in your armchair, neighborhood, your country, or the planet. What is important is that you travel critically, regularly, just as you eat and exercise regularly. Cross-train and change your scene from time to time. a 360 of people and place, tasting and discerning art, architecture, dance, music, taking in the mountains, the sea and the forest, mosques, libraries, temples, synagogues, churches, palaces and slums. On a bike, riding or sailing or simply walking, conversations on the street, in cafes, at bookshops, at the workplace. Amidst the conversation, finding silence, and amidst silence, finding ideas and solutions, approaches to the self and the world. Look not through the camera of your smartphone, but through the lens of your mind, the third eye. Travel is much more than beer bashing at a bar or a selfie in front of the Taj Mahal. Travel was first seated in the mind's eye when my mother, besides Sindhi cooking, brought Gujarat to the table through the dhokla, Tamil Nadu through idlis, Malwa through methi laddus, Kashmir through yaknis, China through sweet corn and chicken soup, France through fish soup plate, Ethiopia through injera, Israel through date syrup ice cream, America through baked Alaska. When gifted a book by her on international cooking in my teens, I was fired to taste the world. You have to love the world to embrace life. To love it, you should see it in all its forms and moods. Travel enables you to see that world and discover the parallel universes within you and outside you. Travel empowers. Thank you very much.